Hi guys, Nada here, and as you can see I'm in a bit of a different environment today because I'm going to talk about something a little bit different than usual. That's this big OLED TV behind me. Now, I've actually been a big fan of OLED TV since I got my very first one around 3 years ago or so, because compared to traditional TVs, the image quality, the contrast, and the HDR experience of an OLED TV is just fantastic. And you know what they say, once you go OLED, there is absolutely no way you're going back. So the first one I had was a 55-inch C7 from LG, and now I upgraded to a 65-inch G10, also from LG. And I thought to, just talk about OLEDs in general today, talk about this new G10 model, and also compare it to my old TV and see what they added to this new lineup. My old TV belonged to a C series, and now you also have a C10 model, the new one, while this new TV is a gallery or a G10 model. So don't read it as a GX, read it as G10. It's a bit confusing, I know. Now the C and the G series use the exact same panel, but they have a slightly different feature set. The G10 is extremely thin and sits completely against the wall with no visual gap. It comes with its own mounting system, and when you hang it up, it will only stick out a tiny bit from top to bottom, giving it that nice and elegant look of a painting. Hence the gallery name, I suppose. While the C series is a bit more old school with a bit of a chunkier behind, it comes with a good old stand, and if you decide to mount it to the wall, it will take quite a bit more space. Now, the new C10 will cost you around $2,200 or 2,100 euros, and you need to pay around 500 more for the G10 version I have here. But as I said, they do come with the exact same panel, so if you're considering a new OLED TV from LG, most of what I say today will apply to both of these models. G10 is a slightly fancier version of the two because it sits so close against the wall. It doesn't come with a stand, as the whole point of buying this TV would be to have that sleek wall mount. Now, if you really just want a super thin panel and for some reason you don't want to hang it up, you can still buy a stand that is also quite thin and elegant, but it will cost you 150 euros extra. Now, a C-series TV would be a bit more regular. It comes with a stand, but without a wall mount. And if we look at my old C7 here, you can see that the top part is super thin, but the bottom part is bulky, as that houses most of the components. And when you look at the G10 here, the whole TV is literally 2 centimeters or less than 1 inch thick, and it's just borderline crazy to think they somehow managed to stuff all the technology in there. Even though it is so thin, you still get a full set of connections. 4 HDMI 2.1 ports, a LAN connection, 3 USB ports, an optical out, a headphone jack, and if you still use traditional TV, you can use the tuner or the old antenna port here as well. While I warmly recommend you do connect it to a wired network for better performance, it does come with Wi-Fi support as well as Bluetooth. Cable management is great with nice sleek tracks leading all the cables out at the bottom of the TV, and my advice would be to connect as many cables as possible before you hang it up. Now, you can reach the connections later, but it's much easier to do it before it's on the wall. Now, the power cable is fixed to the TV and it's not that long, so keep that in mind. Hanging the TV is definitely a two-person job, so make sure you have a buddy with you, but the instructions on how to do it are confusing and sometimes a bit hard to follow, as they somehow made it much more difficult than it really is. So I just ended up partially ignoring the instructions, screwing the small wall bracket onto the wall using a level and the included screws, and we just hung the TV onto it. That's it. You don't really need 50 steps to explain that. Now, don't worry if the bracket wasn't completely leveled either. You can just, rotate your TV and adjust it to perfection afterwards. And that is a proper fantastic feature that I never had on any of my previous TVs, and it makes life so much easier. I kind of wish they mentioned it at the start of the instructions, as it will save us some headache before reaching, the last piece of paper. And just like that, you press the TV against the wall and it's done. It looks pretty impressive in my opinion. And now in an ideal situation, you could carve open your wall and lead all the cables completely out of sight. And I think that's where this design would really shine, and that's definitely what LG is doing in their own marketing. But if you're renting a place, for example, and you aren't really allowed to do so, or you just don't feel like digging a hole in your living room, this wall mounting system will sit perfectly against the wall with, all the cables coming out nicely just underneath. I still need to figure out here what would be the best way to hide all these cables. I am planning to paint this wall in the next few weeks into either plain white or something like a soft green, and I thought it would be nice to just get simple white covers and paint them in the same color of the wall. But if you have any ideas on what would look best, please let me know in the comments down below. All suggestions are more than welcome here. Now, when it comes to OLED technology itself, instead of having that one big backlight lighting the whole panel, like a usual TV would have, on an OLED TV, each pixel is its own light source. That means they can each go quite bright and they can turn off completely when displaying black. So it's full local dimming per pixel, resulting in perfect black levels, no blooming, and infinite contrast. Another strength of OLED panels are the colors. It can cover almost the entire DCI-P3 color space, which means it can basically show any color of any actual content that you will want to see, and color accuracy out of the box is excellent. Even though LG does offer a calibration function, so far every OLED I've seen was calibrated near perfectly, making calibration almost unnecessary. Another big plus of LG's OLEDs is how fast they are. I know that Nvidia is talking about 8K gaming nowadays, but personally I would pick a 4K OLED TV over an 8K one any day. It actually has a 120Hz refresh rate, near instant pixel response times, and virtually zero input lag in game mode, and that mode turns on automatically when you turn on your console. Or at least it did with my Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation here. I don't have an Xbox to test that out, but I suppose it would do the same. There is support for variable refresh rate and G-Sync as well, but I'm gonna talk a bit more about gaming on an OLED TV soon, once I get my RTX 3080 rig ready to go and LG puts out a patch to address some of the issues that people have been having with VRR. Next to the game mode, LG actually offers quite a few other display modes which all change how the overall image looks. It is something you're going to want to experiment with, as there are just so many options and it will completely depend on your own preference. I personally mostly use the game mode for gaming or the cinema mode for watching movies, but you can see what suits your eyes best and just stick with that. For this generation, LG is really focusing on their new Alpha 9 Gen 3 AI processor and how its deep learning is supposed to give you even more options to improve your image as well as your sound, so it can sharpen the text on the screen or adjust the image based on the ambient light, for example. Now, I personally wasn't that impressed, to be honest. Maybe I'm a bit old school and too used to my old TV, but I didn't actually like any of the AI mode effects. I see what it's trying to do, but I just really prefer the image without any unnecessary post-processing. Now, I did try all of them and just ended up going back every time. So I would say it's really great that you have more options to choose from, but I will personally stick to the default setting myself, which is already pretty great. Having said that, I do think LG's software experience is a positive thing in general. The menus are well laid out and easy to understand. There are dedicated apps for all my favorite services that get regular updates, and there are a lot of localized services included as well, even the smaller ones. I don't really watch traditional TV, only streaming services like Netflix, like Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, Plex, and so on. And I find a way I swap between them, get to my consoles and, rearrange the order, which is very important, quite nice. The remote control is almost exactly the same as the one on my C7, but do note that after 3 years, as on any other remote I suppose, the letters and numbers will fade and disappear if you use them a lot. If you want, you can even talk to your remote control as well and tell it that you want to watch some Netflix, for example. But, with dedicated Netflix and Prime buttons and 4 programmable hotkeys to open your favorite apps, talking to your remote control just feels like a party trick rather than an actual time saver. So there's definitely a lot of good sides of OLEDs, but not everything is perfect here, and there are definitely some things that you should really know before getting one for yourself. Now, the main downside of my previous C7 was how insanely reflective it was, especially during the day, because this whole side here is just windows, and when a lot of light hits the room, it would be really hard to watch anything, as I would just see myself in this TV mirror staring right back at me, which is not creepy at all. Now, luckily, Netherlands is famous for their 5 sunny days per year, so it's not that bad overall. Now, the image quality hasn't changed that much between my C7 and the G10, but LG definitely improved the anti-reflection coating. So on this G10, the reflections are much less noticeable. They're still there, but less than before. But still, if you're buying a TV to constantly watch it in a really bright room or with a constant light source behind you, OLED might not be the best choice for you. Another weakness of OLED TVs in general is that while it can make some pixels go really bright, it struggles when a really big number of them need to do so. It will easily do around 700 nits areas on the screen in HDR mode, but if you use it as a monitor and try to show a completely white screen, it will struggle to even get to 150 nits. And that happens because there is an automatic brightness limiter to kind of limit the total power consumption and the heat output, I suppose. Now, this is not supposed to be a really big deal if you just game on the TV or just watch regular programs, but for a PC monitor use or HDR content development, it's definitely something to, keep in mind. I've seen a lot of comments on my PC monitor reviews about how OLED is better, and while I think it's great if you use this as a secondary display to play some games on, I'm not really convinced it will make a great primary PC display just yet. But the biggest OLED concern is the burn-in, as always. And while LG does have a couple of options that will help to reduce it, it is simply something that can happen with OLED panels if you're not, a little bit careful. But it's also really not hard to avoid it by making sure that you don't just watch the same channel every single night or only playing one game day in and day out for months. Now, from my experience, as long as you make sure you vary your content a little bit, it should not be a problem at all. So I don't think it should concern most users, but it is definitely another strong reason why I wouldn't put one of these TVs as my main PC monitor. And because of burn-in, one very specific feature of this G10 series runs into a bit of a trouble, and that's this beautiful gallery mode. So their whole idea was to have a thin TV that can also be a painting when you're not using it. So it comes with a lot of different paintings that even include a picture frame for more of a genuine feel, or you can even upload your own photos. However, to avoid burn-in, LG made sure that the pictures change quite often and all the time, and you cannot change that option. So you don't really get one calm painting on your wall. You get an active wallpaper or a PowerPoint slideshow presentation with the paintings just swapping every few seconds, which I personally found a bit busy actually. And I understand that there isn't really a way around this, not without running into a burn-in risk. So unfortunately for this interesting gallery idea, OLED technology and one image showing for a long time just don't go so well together. So if you like swapping between all these masterpieces or even your own photos, you can use this feature just fine. But if you're like me, you will probably just turn off your TV when you're not using it and leave it at that. Now, what I did find quite impressive is the sound, especially considering how thin this TV is. It has a nice enough volume and a comfortable sound overall, so it will be completely fine for casual TV watching. But the built-in sound is something where the C series will do a bit better, as it is thicker and it fits larger speakers with more bass. Now, the gallery sound is good for its slender size, but the C7 is better, and I believe the C10 model should be even better. So if you already have extra speakers or plan on getting some, this parameter won't matter anyways. I use these Edifier S1000 dBs, for example, that sound really great and really don't cost an arm and a leg. Strongly recommend them. So if you're considering an OLED TV, there are a couple of things that you really need to think about here, but overall, the benefits of an OLED TVs over other TVs, especially when it comes to the image quality and the speed, they just outweigh the downsides in my opinion. I know that OLED isn't cheap, but it is becoming more mainstream, especially more mainstream than 3 years ago when I got my first one. But if you're coming from an old LCD, the upgrade will be worth it, like so much. And if you already own an OLED from a few years ago, I don't really see a big reason to upgrade, because in terms of image quality, it hasn't changed much. The newer versions have a couple of more options, a couple of more features, and a better coating against reflections, but the overall experience isn't that different. So if a new one is too expensive for you, getting a last year's model on a good deal is a great option as well, in my opinion. But should you get a G or a C model? That is completely up to you and what you want to achieve. My rational self instantly thought to get a C10 model because it's $500 or euros cheaper. It has the same panel and a slightly better speaker due to its larger size. But if you want a really sleek looking centerpiece that's super thin, close to the wall, and you could nicely hide all the cables, the G10 would be a perfect match. And man, I'm super happy I went with this one actually. So looking at it now, I think paying around 20% more for something that does look even better isn't that bad for a luxury piece in your living room. Now I know it's not for everyone, but if you already spent much more on a luxury couch and fancy furniture, the G10 price premium for the looks alone is not something you're not familiar with, right? Now, that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching today. I really hope you enjoyed this somewhat unusual video. If you did, please give me a like and click that subscribe button to never miss an upload. Bye guys!